The French Revolution took place between 1789 and 1799. It was a period of time where the people wanted to change the monarchy into a republic. As its motto says, liberty, equality, and fraternity, this revolution was inspired in ideas of equality which changed through the years, having political and social advance as well as abuses. One of the main causes of this revolution was because of the great divide between the nobility and the clergy. France at this moment was divided into three states. The first state, which was the clergy with 100,000. The second state, which was the nobility with 400,000. And the third state, that was everyone else, such as the bourgeoisie, which earns the peasantry, and it was most of the population of France. The first and second state enjoyed privileges that the third did not, because they didn't have to pay taxes. Also, were the only members in society who could hold positions of importance such as officers in army, which caused a great discontent between the third state. This state, which included 90% of the population, such as the peasants, were forced to do military service, couldn't fish or hunt in noble states, had to pay taxes to their lords, kings, and church, and had to use the lord's mill, oven, and wine press and pay for it. While the third state was forced to do all this stuff, the first and second state, such as the noble, had almost all authority over peasants, didn't have to do military service, were exempt from most taxes, collect tolls from people using roads and markets, and the clergy lived in great luxury in chateaux and palaces. Kings, which were the first state of France, had the complete authority over everyone through their ministers and local officials. The yearly incomes compared were really high and different. The third state gained nothing compared to the first and the second state. The taxes and feudal dues crushed everyone. France was experiencing other problems too that led to this revolution, such as the money, that by 1787 the French government was bankrupt, 4,000 million in debt, and the money was spent in costly wars not important. The people accused royals, especially Queen Marie Antoinette, of expending too much money in luxuries. The tax system was corrupt and some tax collectors didn't give the taxes to the government. By 1789, the king wanted that the first and the second state pay tax, but of course they refused. Other cause of this French Revolution was the bad harvest the French encountered. The people in France at this time depend in agriculture and in farming, but in 1787 to 1789, terrible weather, heavy rain, hard winter, and hot summers led to 3 bad harvests. It led to peasants have small incomes while food price roses, and the poor harvest led to French farmers unemployed. The poor were starving, not afford food or find a job. But meanwhile, the nobility, the clergy, and King Louis's family lived in luxury in their palace and chateau. Other cause of this revolt was when Louis called the States General to meet in Versailles, May 1789. There were 1,100 members, or deputies, divided in 3 orders: the noble, the clergy, and the third state, which represent millions of ordinary French people. The king hoped that they approved new taxes. The nobles and the clergy hoped that they control affairs to continue their privileged lifestyle. The middle class wanted democracy, and the peasants hoped solutions to problems. But this meeting was a failure. The king not presented them with any proposal, so were left to think up their own ideas, which meant that Louis didn't have control. The fourth cause of this revolution was the National Assembly, which took place in June 1789. The deputies of the third state were tired of the arguments over how each other should both declare themselves a national assembly, which they were 96% of the population, and felt that they were the true parliament. They wanted a constitution showing how France had to be governed, and they met at the royal tennis court, pledging an oath not to leave until King agreed to meet the demand. He accepted, and first and second state joined this assembly. The revolution begins when Paris' hungry crowd attacked the royal fortress prisons in July 14, 1789. They saw this as a symbol of everything that was wrong with France. It was a symbol of the king and his government, and the Paris crowd wanted to destroy it. Soldiers in Paris refused to stop the attack, showing that King Louis XV had also lost the control of the army. The people were crazy. Peasants started losing patience, burning chateaux and palaces of their lords. They felt the documents were burned. Later on, the National Assembly passed a law on the 4th of August 1789 that eliminated all further privilege and unjust taxation. Then the mid-of-August, the Assembly published the Declaration of the Rights of Man. There was nothing about rights of women or the position of slaves. A new constitution was born in 1789. The members of the three states, as the Assembly, worked to bring a new constitution for France. The main features were that the king was to be called King of France, not of France; that the Jews, deputies, tax collectors, and priests were elected by active citizens. A new taxation system depended on the incomes. The church tax was abolished, and the priest took an oath of loyalty to the state. One of the most important characters in the French Revolution was Louis XV. He was given the throne of France in 1776. He was an absolute monarch, so had complete power. He was dominated by his wife, Marie Antoinette, who was criticized by the love affairs, overspending, and for many other ways she interfered with Louis' attempt to govern the country. It was said that he didn't understand the events between 1789 to 1791. In 1789, Paris crowd attacked his palace, capturing he and his family. So, he signed the decree from the Assembly and an oath of loyalty after the Constitution was proclaimed. He continued supporting the nobles after they went away of the country because of the crowd burning their chateau. They wanted to leave and that their monarch friends invade France, putting down the revolution and restoring Louis to monarch. He wrote this letter to kings of Prussia, Spain, and Sweden, as emperors of Austria and Russia. Between 22 to 21 of June 1791, he tried to escape to Montmedy, meeting the nobles he supported and the support of Australia for the army. He had the control of France, but he was discovered because the coach was really slow and there were 6 persons instead of 5 in the passport. In June 22, he was captured and brought back. He kept them as constitutional monarchs, so they had to obey the rules of the constitution. It seemed that the revolution was finally over, but he apparently just accepted the constitution, because he worked to overthrow it before it was even achieved. He tried to bribe with considerable sums several members of the constitution and legislative assemblies. He was disgraced with Germany, Italy, and Spain. He caused that the blood of the Frenchmen flow. After this, its trial started in 1792. He faced 33 charges, and he was surely accused of being a traitor. He only accepted the constitution to keep him on the throne while he waited to the French armies to establish his rule in Britain. He denied a lot of stuff and said that he just wanted the best for everyone. The execution of the king started. It was decided by a vote. The deputies had to answer if he was or not guilty, if there should be a referendum to decide his fate, and which punishment he would be exposed to, which death penalty won. The 21st of January 1793, day of the execution, everything was perfect. The troops were around. At 10 in the morning, he arrived to the guillotine, and at 10:22 he was dead. That same year, in October 16, Marie Antoinette was executed. Followed by this execution, the reign of terror started. From 1793 to 1794, people suspect that helping force enemies were sent to the guillotine. It started because of the executions before, the Bad War, the Peasant Revolt, and the revolt against the Jacobin government. A lot of innocent people were killed. 300 people executed by cannon because Jacobin thought the guillotine was too slow. 2,000 people were sunk into a river, all drowned, and they contaminated all the water. But finally, this reign of the terror was ended in 1794. During this time, Maximilien Robespierre took power. He was a lawyer, States General, and was in the National Assembly and Convention. He was leader of the Jacobin government after Louis XV died. He brought ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity to the minds of the French, but he suddenly supported this age of terror because allowed death of thousands of French. Because of this, he was arrested and guillotined July 28, 1794. In these revolutions, some symbols were created to infuse public a new sense of tradition for the Enlightenment. Some of these symbols were such as the faces, which represent state power, justice, and unity. Also, the tricolor flag of France was an important symbol which represents the motto, which said, "Liberty, fraternity, and equality." All of these are defined in this flag. Blue represents freedom and liberty, white, peace, and red, the revolution, the courage, and the fortitude. The winged woman personifies the law, to help people understand the importance of French Revolution and inspire them to join. The Liberty Tree is a symbol of everlasting republic, national freedom, and political revolution. The Marseillaise, the national anthem of France, is one of the most important symbols of this revolution, because it represented the glory, the liberty, and represented what was happening in that time. After it ended, the constitution changed again. Politicians tried to find a moderate form of government, but the new government directory had problems. There was not money left. Plots from loyalists and extreme revolutionaries started. So one of the directors began to search for a general who could control France. The change fell into the great hands of Napoleon Bonaparte. Not only long-lasting consequences were for France, but also for the rest of the world. Some of the consequences for France were such as the Reign of Terror. The revolution also ended the feudal system in France, so it influenced French culture from beginning a middle class or a bourgeoisie. It also gave France its actual constitution, called the Declarations of Rights of Man and Citizens, gave its actual flag and its anthem. It led to a republic because although Napoleon reigned after the revolution, people in France had at least freedom in 1792. It was the dawn of a modern era. It gave nationalism because it was the first time in France where people united under one common cause with a common sense. But most important of everything, it inspired the major socialist revolutions of the 20th century to revolt in places such as Russia, China, and Cuba. Also, other American revolutions were inspired by this, such as the Colombian one.